If you're new to Excel, you may not be familiar with the fact that Excel has a lot of functions that are built into the program, and that can save you a lot of time for calculations. Now, if you go over here, let's see, if I put this whole thing, you can see it says auto sum. All right, I'm going to go back to the smaller case because I want to compare it to the calculator. You can click auto sum. It'll sum up a series of numbers. So if I had 5 numbers here, I could hit auto sum. It would sum up that column. But you can click the drop down menu, and it gives you it gives you several popular functions: sum, average, count numbers, maximum, minimum. You can also click on more functions, and you can see that there's another drop down menu here that says most recently used. So these are the ones, some of the ones I've used recently in Excel. But if you go to the drop down menu, they have functions in all different fields: finance, math, trig, statistics. So if you were looking up averages, if you needed to calculate different distributions, and F-test, you may be doing this in stats class. There's all kinds of the geometric mean, something we do in finance as well. And underneath, it tells you, first, here's the format. In this case, it's geo-mean. You would write down equals geo-mean, or you could click this on and then it would ask you for this information. Let me go back to that one. Where was I? Geo-mean. If you look under here, you can see it tells you how to put the information in. So if you're calculating the geometric mean, it tells you what it does. Returns the geometric mean for an array of numbers, an array or range of positive numeric data. It calculates these geometric means. So if you tell them, if you tell it what the numbers are, it will calculate it for you. Let's go to other functions. For us, we're interested in the financial functions. You may use some of the stats functions as well. Now, the reason I still have my calculator sitting here is they have a lot of the functions that are exactly the same as this row right here. N, which is number of periods, I/Y, which is interest rate, PV, payment, future value, etc. Let's see what we have here. They have FV. FV returns this same as this future value function. And if you look down here, they say rate. We call it I/Y, interest rate per year, using the financial calculator. But they call it rate. So the first number you would put in, you would put equals. If you don't put equals, it thinks FV is a title or a label. So you put in equals FV, and you'll put in the rate. So you'll either type in the rate, or the rate may be in a separate column, or separate cell. Oftentimes I put them in separate cells so I can change the rate to see how the numbers change. N period, that's N here. That's the number of periods. Payment, okay, so it uses the same function, PMT. That's the annuity, okay, those equal payments made at equal intervals. Present value, if there's a present value. And type will tell you whether it's, if you leave it blank, it will treat the payment as an ordinary annuity. If you type in 1, it will treat it as an annuity due. So let's type in a few numbers, and we'll try this financial function. We'll compare it to the calculator to make sure that it's doing what we want it to do. In fact, there are functions in here. For example, net present value. There's net present value function key. It doesn't actually calculate net present value. It calculates the present value for a stream of cash flows. It doesn't really calculate NPV. So you've got to be careful. And you also have to know how you put the data in. For your calculator, you put in whole numbers. For example, 8 I/Y for 8%. Here you put in 0.08. So you have to be careful. You should do a couple to make sure that you understand what it is you're doing. So let's put some numbers in here. All right, I'll put in PV. I'll put in, well, let me start with FV. So I'll put in FV as 1,000, and I'll put in the rate as, you can put it in this way. You can put it in 8%. But if you just put in 8, it's going to treat it as 800%. Number of periods, I'll put it in as 10. And let's calculate the present value. All right, so let's use the function. So the function is going to be equals FV. You can go to the drop-down menu as well. And if I put the parentheses in, it will tell me to put it in this format. All right, I didn't want FV, I wanted PV, I'm sorry. PV equals PV. So the rate is in cell B2, comma, the number of periods is in cell B3, and the future value is in cell B1. If I close up the parenthesis and hit enter, I get 6,000. That doesn't look right. What did I do wrong? Let's see. All right, let's do that again. I did something wrong. Equals PV. Here's what I did wrong. You'll notice it wanted a payment. It treated this as $1,000 a year for 10 years. That's not what I wanted. Okay, we can do the payment one. So if I want just the present value of this, so you got to be careful. Okay, so let's do that again. Rate is in B2. The number of periods is in B3. There's no payment, so put 0 in, and then the future value is in B1. That looks better. Let's see if this is correct here. So let's go to our financial calculator. We know how this one works. N is 10 periods. The interest rate we said was 8%. The future value was 1,000. Compute present value, and we get the same thing, $463.19. All right, let's change this. Okay, well, let's change this to a payment. All right, so we can do the calculation we actually had before. We'll calculate the present value. So let's say equals PV. Rate again is in B2. Number of periods is in B3. Now we have a payment in B1, and you could type in 0 if you want. And we get $6,710.08. Let's see if that's correct. Let's see if it's calculating an ordinary annuity. So I'm going to clear my workspace here. All right, N is 10. Interest rate is 8%. The payment is 1,000. Compute present value, $6,110.08. Suppose I change this so that it becomes an annuity due. So I'm going to go second, and I'm going to change this from end to begin, and then we'll try it out over here. We'll see it, make sure it works. And we change it to begin, enter, okay, and then I can just say, I think I can just calculate. I'm sorry, I don't need second. Compute present value, $7,246.89. All right, let's go back to this one. Let's rewrite this as the following: equals PV. We're going to follow that format. Rate is in B2. Payment is in I'm sorry, number of periods is in B3. Payment is in B1. We have no future value, so that's 0. And we're going to change the type to 1. And this should give us this number. This should treat it as an annuity due. Let's see if we get that. $7,246.89. So it's really good to use the functions, try it out, see what functions there are, and do some calculations by hand. You want to make sure you understand what it is Excel is doing. Let me show you one here. Suppose I did this problem this way. I'm sorry, equals PV, and I'm going to put in the rate as 8, like we did with the calculator, 8%. And we'll do the same thing. Number of periods is 10. Payment is 1,000. Okay, 0 for the future value. We'll treat it as 1. So watch, we're going to get an enormous number because it's going to treat it, oh no, the smaller number because it's going to treat it as a huge interest rate. It's treating this as 800%, not 8%. Let me go back and fix this. Let me change this to 0.08. Then we should get the same number. So you want to try and you want to do a few of these and make sure you understand what the financial calculator is doing and what Excel is doing. They don't always do exactly the same thing. Okay? There are other financial functions you can use here. The ones we'll use most frequently are these time value of money functions, but it calculates duration, which measures bond rate sensitivity. It calculates all kinds of things. Internal rate of return, something that we do when we evaluate projects, something we do in the second corporate finance class. Modified internal rate of return. It can calculate the number of periods. If you'll recall, we've calculated the number of periods using the financial calculator. If we know the present value, the future value, and the interest rate, we can calculate the number of periods. So it calculates a whole lot of things, some of which you're probably not familiar with, some of which I'm not familiar with because I don't use many of these functions. But it does a lot of things. It calculates Treasury bill yield. So if you know the settlement and the maturity and you know this information, you can use it to calculate that. Calculates yield, again, for a bond. So it calculates a lot of different functions. If you're doing statistics, again, we have statistical functions here, averages, we have distributions. You can find the normal distribution. You can find standard normal distribution. I think that's S norm. Do they have S norm? Perhaps not. Perhaps it's listed as normal S, oh there it is, normal S distribution as opposed, so this returns the standard normal cumulative distribution. If you go to normal dist, it returns the normal cumulative distribution function. That's the function that you're under the normal curve and less than this given number. So there are a lot of different functions. If you haven't used Excel, it's worth coming here. There are math and trig functions if you're looking for cosines and things like that, something we don't really do much in economics and finance. Pi, powers, all kinds of things, sine functions. What else do we have? You have logical functions. If if A is greater than B, then it equals 1. So you might want to count up, like I might want to count up the number of students who scored more than 70% on the test. And I could just have it go through and look at everybody's grade and say, if the grade was greater than 70, then that equals 1. And then I would just count up the number of ones. So there are a lot of different functions in Excel, and it's well worth exploring them to see what they have. It returns logical true value functions, false value functions, and functions. Okay, I don't know how to use a lot of these because I don't use them. All right, they have date and time functions. So it'll converts a date in the form of text to a number that represents the date in Microsoft Office. So there's all kinds of things you can do. I encourage you to come on to Excel and to experiment, to try some of these different functions. Excel is an excellent tool for business, and one of the things that you really want to know how to do, because if you have a small business, you can use this to keep track of your accounts. You can do forecasting. There's all kinds of really interesting stuff you can do if you've mastered Excel.